Hey everybody, welcome back to World History with Mr. Finn. Today we are continuing now with our world history story. If you remember, we had gotten to England developing kind of a limited monarchy where they had a king, but there was also parliament that allowed the people and the noble classes to have a more say in how the government would run and how the country would run. But it was all solidified as one country of England where we left off. So England had developed its own unified country. It had a king, but it also had representative government in a way as well. So we have a country, and it was around the year, 1250 to 1300. You can see 1302 and something that we're going to talk about now. So around this same period, we are now going to shift over to France. Now, let's give you a recap of France, since we're doing a whole recap here, getting back on track. France, if you remember, was the Carolingian Empire. We had Charlemagne, and then his empire had been divided by his sons, and there had been the Viking attacks that were in England as well as in France. And so we developed that feudalistic system in France as well. And now we are going to see what happens after that, Viking invasion from 800 to around, 1000. And we had some crusades in there. So really we're looking at that period of, 1000 to 1302. It's a 300-year period that is going to kind of do the same thing as England, which establishes France as a country. However, it's going to be slightly different. So let's jump into it quickly, huh? Let's start over here. We're talking France, people. France. So, France is going to have a similar, path. So, in France, we are going to see something happen that is a little bit different. So, in England, you would remember that the king had a lot of power, but eventually the nobles started to chip away at it. In France, as we come out of this invaders period, France is going to have a strong monarchy. So they are going to have a king. This king is going to consolidate power, which means bring in power. He's going to expand his power, just like in England. However, this is where we have the slight difference in France. Whereas the strong monarchy is happening early in France, it's not going to get chipped away like the one in England. So in England, just so we have it on the board, it should have it in your notes already, but we'll have it because we're doing a little recap here. England is going to have what we call limited monarchy, meaning that there is a king, but the people have a lot of power too. Nobles and other, lords and other people in the country are going to have a say in how it works. Not just the king. Eventually, like we started to see the Magna Carta and things like that. In France, it, again, begins with a strong monarchy, just like England, but it doesn't get chipped away. What happens in France is it starts with a strong monarchy, and this continues. The strong monarchy continues. In fact, this monarchy continues, and really the term is it expands power. So the king and the people who are in charge in France are going to continue to take more land for themselves. They're going to give themselves more power. They're going to take more control. But it is working. So let's put it this way. Just because this king is what's going to be called an absolute monarch, which I'll put here in a second and explain that, just because it's the one person in power does not necessarily mean it's going poorly. France is actually a very powerful country. This monarchy in France is doing a very well-organized job of maintaining this power and keeping France in charge of its lands and holdings, and it can fight off anybody who's trying to take any land from it. So this monarchy is strong, it's well-organized, it's powerful, and it continues to expand its power, and nobody steps up to the noble class, the other rich people in France don't try to do anything. They allow this to continue because it's working well for them. And at this time in France, even the poor people who are in France don't have a very good life. Trust me, you would not want to be a poor person anytime during the years of 1000 to 1300. However, they're organized, they know their role, they're not, rising up, or there's not a lot of instability. So things continue in France along this path. So what we're going to see is, whereas England becomes a limited monarchy where the nobles and people take more power, in France we are going to see this, as I just said, an absolute monarchy. And an absolute monarchy is when the king has 100% of power. So the king is going to have 100% of the power. The monarchy is going to hold all of the power, have all the decision-making process or decision-making power, and they run the country. But, again, I said it worked. And here's another reason why it's going to work. And this is going to be the meeting of the Estates General. Now, the Estates General is like Parliament or like our Congress, where, the king says, listen, everything's rolling well. The monarchy is good. However, I want to give, the people the feeling that they do have power in our country as well, because that just means that they'll feel like they are taking part, and it just adds to the stability of the country, where you don't get the noble class or the other people rising up and saying, oh, we got to stop this. They will feel like they're taking part in the government. So this Estates General, again, essentially the same as Parliament or our Congress, gives representation to the people to try and, make laws and do different things and give their advice and opinions on things, is going to meet starting in the year 1302. So from 1000 to 1302, which is 300 years, France is growing in power with its monarchy. And at its height here, or getting close to its, probably not its height, but, pretty strong, they are going to establish this Estates General. So let me tell you how this breaks down quickly. So the Estates General, it's basically, it's called the first estate, second, very complicated here, right? Second estate. You will need to know this, though. Third estate. We will see this later when we get to France in the future, but not for a while. So the Estates General is made up of the first, second, and third estate. Now, who is in each of these estates? Well, the first estate is made up of the clergy, which is the church. So, church folk, the bishops and the cardinals and the archbishops and people who are involved in the church, the Catholic Church, are going to be in this first estate. The second estate is going to be all of the nobles. All of the, we'll call them rich people, because that's what they are. The land-holding rich people are going to be the second estate. And then the third estate that makes up the Estates General is going to be, wait for it, everyone else. So, that's just everyone else. But that everyone else includes everybody. So you can be like rich, poor, it doesn't matter. You're just not a noble person. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of an issue with this right off the bat. Does it sound good? Yeah, look at everyone in the country is a member of this Estates General. They can give their opinion on things, but who's going to make the final decision? It's an absolute monarchy, people. It's going to be the king. The monarchy is going to do so. What we're going to see as a problem with this is the numbers of people in it. Here is what the Estates General does. They make it very simple. I'll do it like this. I'll be very clear here. Each estate gets one vote. If you've had American history, we've looked at things where there's population and one votes and this and that. Here's the issue with this. If each estate gets one vote in this Estates General, what's going to end up happening is these two are going to vote almost always the same. And they're going to always have their own thoughts. That could happen in the future, and it will happen in the future. Just giving you that prior knowledge here. So let's look at the population quickly. I have two other countries to talk about, but not as in-depth as this, and I'll tell you why in a second. Let me get rid of the king has 100% power, because we know that. It's an absolute monarchy in France. So let's just say the clergy is 1% of the population. The rich people, the nobility, might be 3% of the population, which means this third estate, if we do our simple math, will be 96% of the population. Meaning this everyone category, the third estate, has it's like represents almost all the people. However, each one gets one vote. So if they get one vote and these two vote the same, they outvote 96% of the people. So as long as this 4% or this very small percent of the people vote the same way, they make all the rules for everyone else. So it's not really a fair system. What's done by the king and the monarchy is to set up this Estates General and say, look, we're giving you guys expanded power. We respect you, the people. But the church and the nobles are going to be working with the monarchy. They're always going to vote the same way. So you can see that eventually, hopefully you can see it, that eventually we're going to run into some problems. If things start to go bad in France and everyone is suffering, they want to get something done to help them, but these two, the rich people in the church who have a lot of money as well, think of them both as rich categories, vote not to give them something, then they don't get anything. And so that is going to be a problem in the future. But for now, today, in 1302, this is a really good thing. The monarchy has said, look, you guys have some power. However, it's fake, really. Because who really still holds all the power? One, the monarchy, because they're going to vote whatever the monarchy and the government wants. And so it's just kind of a fake thing to make people think that they do have power. So the important thing to take away today, though, is this. We have two. We essentially have two countries. By the time we're at like 1300, we have England and we have France. We have two countries, modern countries. England and France exist today. That's what we're getting towards by the time we're getting into the 1300s. We've come a long way from the year 500, where in the West we had Clovis, and then we had the rise of these little tiny empires, and then the invaders come in, and then we go through feudalism, and then we do this. So we have gone a long way. This doesn't happen quickly. This is 800, 900 years of kind of craziness happening in Western Europe. But we finally get to two modern countries. Now, there are two other fairly major modern countries that are going to continue to exist the same. There's three. If you count Spain, Spain is still going to be basically occupied by the Muslims, so that's where Spain is during this time. But the other two, you have the notes. So let me get rid of the Estates General and tell you quickly, because there's not really much to say about these other two countries that are kind of major countries at this point. Not yet, at least. One is Germany. There's still no Germany yet. Germany at this time is called the Holy Roman Empire. It is not Rome. It's just what it is called, the Holy Roman Empire. It's basically just think of it as many small kingdoms. So this is modern day Germany does not exist yet. It's the Holy Roman Empire, and it's made up of all these little tiny kingdoms kind of still fighting amongst each other under the, rule of these kings, but also under the rule of the Catholic Church. And that's where modern day Germany is. It's just split up into a whole bunch of different things. Still like France and England were up until they had become unified countries. The other one is Italy, modern country. That's where Rome was. However, it is exactly the same as Germany. It is many small kingdoms. So these many small kingdoms make up Italy, and they make up Germany, and so we do not see a modern country of Italy or Germany yet. By the time we're in around the year 1300, we have only two unified countries that we know of like today, and that is France and England. But we're starting to move in that direction. Because if you think about this, now, just to give you an idea, we said 1302 for the Estates General Meeting. We are going to see, let's take America, for example. We haven't talked at all about America, really. We see Columbus sail to America and discover America for Europe in 1492. So we're only, essentially 190 years away from seeing, America pop up. From the start of American history class, for example, we're getting close to, modern times. So we have come a long way. For your assignment today, though, because we'll be moving on from here. Actually, I don't know why we do it this order, but probably because there's a lot of different things going on. We're going to jump back to the Byzantine Empire, which I'll explain how that works when we get to it next class. But for today, I want you to look up 5 important dates for both B-O-T-H, France and England. This is not a timeline. You do not need to give me visual representation, but I do need to see the date, 5 important dates for both. Well, let me be specific here. From 1000, as I said, to 1300. From 1000 to 1300. There's a lot of dates. Those are 300 years to find 5 important dates from France and England, or 5 important things that happened during that time. And what you're going to do, 5 important dates for both France and England, and give me a description. Brief, 2 to 3 sentences. What happened on that date? Why is it important? Who's involved? However you want to, think about the 5 W's that usually, that's 5 different things you could think of. But, what was important about the date? Where was it? Who was involved? Just give me a couple sentences telling me about what it is. So 5 dates for England, 5 dates for France, and again, just a description of what happened on those dates. That is your assignment today. So let's get that in today for attendance and participation purposes, and I will see you next class.